Welcome to Pixel Theater, everyone. My name is Nick Noel, and I am one of your hosts of this little show.
I've made this joke before, but I still find it humorous. I'm player 2 on Stratton. How are you?
Player 2 enters. And this is a podcast dedicated to film adaptations of video games. We explore the weird and wild world of these sometimes cinematic triumphs and more often than not, cinematic disappointments. And today we are going to be talking about Street Fighter: Legend of Chun-Li.
In life, there is beauty and there is terror. One must not overwhelm the other.
For the second time, because I don't think you're a podcast until you lose a whole episode. And so now we're officially a podcast.
I'm glad you brought it up because I was going, I was going to go down the path of referencing things. Oh, well, the last time I said this. But yeah, that's a bummer, but it always happens. I mean, you're not a podcast unless you lose an entire day's worth of work.
Yeah, exactly. You know, technology is not infallible.
Grand.
And I remember just real quick. I remember because you were at work, which is always going to be a troubling time because you're so constrained by how much time you have.
I know.
And then you were using one of the booths, and then like we just finished. And I just saw your like face fall as as the system crashed and just we lost everything.
So I love the programs we use. Actually, I've debated buying my own license to use it at home, but when it crashes hard, and the panels turn white. So I noticed that while we were talking, but I thought we were okay, and then it was like this circle. And I realized like my timeline was just gone. And I was like, oh God, well, maybe I can close it and it'll open, it'll go right back to it. And it was gone. And I was so heartbroken. I was like, no, because I could just tell I wasn't giving a crap about the audio with our conversation. I was hoping it was good enough for video, but I knew we'd have an audio source. But once that was there, I was like, oh, my end's going to be pretty bad.
So we're redoing this. We are spending more time on Legend of Chun-Li than probably the scriptwriter did.
Definitely the director.
So let's go into our first segment here with our feature presentation. Okay, Ron. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
Legend of Chun-Li. It's in the Street Fighter kind of franchise. I don't think this in any way references the original Street Fighter movie. I think this is supposed to be a standalone. It's definitely supposed to be a standalone property since all the characters are different. And it essentially tells the story of Chun-Li, who's a concert pianist who is trying to find her kidnapped father, who is you know what? I don't know what he is. He's like a spy or something.
Yeah,
Maybe.
They don't really go into that. It's kind of like Peter Parker's dead in the Sony reboots of Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. It's like, hey, he's just mysterious. And
they never had time to get into it before that franchise was destroyed. But so she goes up against crime lord M. Bison to try and get her dad back, and then in the process fights a lot of guys, and then also Chris Klein is there. That's basically the plot, right?
Yeah. And I went into Chris Klein on the last one, but he brought something to this.
Yeah, I think he did. So what are your initial thoughts about this movie? What did you think?
So it's interesting. I didn't think about it till just now, but I wonder if they were cocky enough to think that this was going to start like a franchise, because I think 2009, I want to say, is around the time they were trying to do the X-Men Legends thing, because it was.
I remember the X-Men Legends thing.
Yeah, so you're going to get Wolverine, and then Gambit was going to have a standalone, so everyone was going to have their own focused movie. So I wonder, and I'm just spitballing, I'm just thinking about it, because since Chun-Li got a focus, I wonder with how this movie ends if the next one was going to be focused on Ryu and go into different. That would have been kind of cool if that had worked. But
that's definitely what they're setting up, and it definitely is continuing the trend of any movie that's tied to any kind of franchise or existing property. You have to write it that there could be a sequel.
Yeah.
as if
Well, I
there's
think
going to
all
be.
these guys, that's where these poor actors kind of get roped into some of these sequels. Like, they're probably take it or leave it 3 picture deals. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you are signing on to a new franchise no matter what. These aren't treated as one-offs. And but yeah, so this movie, it does its own thing with the lore. Like M. Bison inexplicably is Scottish despite being an infant when he lost his Scottish parents and he grew up in
Yeah.
Thailand. So it's kind of weird that that's
It's
a
like
thing.
it strains credulity, however that word is pronounced. I think the only consistent thing in our podcast is that I don't know how to pronounce things. Um, but it strains reality that he would even be speaking English, much less English with a Scottish
Yeah.
accent.
You give it a stretch for a movie. For okay, this
Like,
guy's gonna speak English, but
although,
like to have an accent just because your parents had an accent is really weird,
yeah,
especially since you didn't grow
accents
up with
aren't
those parents.
genetic.
Yeah, he's not genetically accented, if that's the thing.
It is it okay. Follow me here. Given how inconsistent that Neil McDonough's accent is in this, kind of goes in and out. Sometimes it's Scottish, sometimes it's Irish, sometimes it's very American.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe a kind of subtle idea is that he actually doesn't have a Scottish accent, but he feels so disconnected from his parents' roots that he tries to affect one, and that's why it's
Mm.
so bad.
Yeah, okay. That would be kind of cool if that was worked into the story
like
somehow.
like
See,
just a weird quirk of M. Bison that, like, okay, listen, don't mention how bad his accent is. He hates it. Like, just pretend it's really great.
you know how was it Wizard? They used to do like the fan castings of like X-Men, and like it always had Patrick Stewart as or Professor X, obviously. Um, I feel like I was doing that in a post Jean-Claude Van Damme Street Fighter movie. Like I always
Hmm.
thought, like who would be great, and Neil McDonough as M. Bison, like I thought would be perfect. He has the striking eyes, like put him in the suit with the flowing cape. So it was so funny to me that they cast him, but he never once dresses like the character, They're just
Yeah,
making this kind of generic crime boss. I feel like it's such a waste. The
Neil.
movie,
Yeah, Neil McDonough. Yeah, I think you're right. Is if you're gonna cast anybody besides Raul Julia, this is
yeah,
this is perfect. And even
he
Raul
would have been
Julia,
great.
like, yeah, Raul Julia is hard to beat. I love
Oh,
not Raul Julia's performance in the original Street Fighter is etched into my childhood DNA. Like, it is just,
same.
it is,
It's up there
yeah.
with Frank Langella with Skeletor. Masters of the Universe is terrible, but my God, he is chewing the scenery and he's having so much fun. Like I watched that movie just for his performance, man. Like I still think he did a great job in that.
Yeah.
So
But besides that, I think you're right. Like, Neil McDonough is a great casting choice for
yeah,
this role. And
but
I
it's
think I think for a lot of the casting, it's either pretty good to okay. I don't think
yeah.
anybody is so horribly miscast.
Michael
As
Clark
to be a
Duncan's like an
problem.
inspired choice as
Yeah,
Balrog.
Balrog
Um,
slash M Bison in Japan.
Yeah, that's that whole thing is so funny to me. Um, the fact that never course corrected, everyone just stuck with that is so funny. But
I do
yeah,
think it's funny that nobody course corrected, and then also they just have to change it each time they do a translation. So,
I
like,
know
it's
it's so
always
funny.
this way in
It's
Japan,
always
and
this
it's
way in
always the
Japan,
other way in America.
and they shall never mix.
Yeah.
It's so silly to me. Um, so this movie tries to do its own thing, and it's commendable for that. But it's interesting just how it ignores the lore. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about what it did because it was a good attempt at making a movie, but it strays so far away from what Street Fighter is.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's fights in streets, but uh,
There is
the
some
fact that there's
actual street fighting, unlike
yeah,
the other Street Fighter movie. So you got,
yeah,
even although that the street fighting that happens in this Street Fighter is very goofy street fighting.
really is, yeah, because they are very. nothing is more egregious than like poorly done wire work,
Hmm.
and this has that in spades. And it's trying to embrace a kind of wushu style of filmmaking,
Yeah.
but when everything else is so grounded and realistic, it really sticks out. And
Yeah.
they can claim
Yeah.
that's what it is, but it's really just poorly executed.
It's like basically they only watched oh god, House of, why
Oh,
am I
Flying
blank?
Daggers.
No, the, not House of, but um the first one, like the
Crouching Tiger.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Thank
Yeah,
you. And like they saw like how like unnatural that wire work was and thought that's how
yeah,
all of it is. It's like
yeah,
no, that's like a specific example.
yeah.
And maybe they just, wanted it to look like that to kind of bring in that
Maybe.
video game elements. It is one of those things we talk about every time we look at, especially these fighting games. Like it is weird what they choose to directly reference in the video game and what they
Yeah,
choose to like not have anything to do with. And in this one, it's trying to have a more natural environment where people dress like normal humans. And um the storyline is, at least 90% of it is just a traditional action storyline, but then they do weird goofy like fight moves and have chi
yeah. And
blasts,
those
stuff like
fireballs,
that,
and yeah.
fireballs. Who is the, you reference, what's the guy's name, the guy who does the visual effects training?
Oh,
um
yeah, yeah. So everything in this is brought to you by Andrew Kramer from VideoCopilot.net.
there we go.
You know,
Yeah.
like they watched one of his tutorials, and that's how you get the fireballs in this.
Yeah, and
And
it's only, it's, they don't change it. It is just they bought one fireball or like energy
yeah,
blast
Fireball
effect.
preset 01, and they just
Yeah, and
copy
they're
and
like,
paste it
just use that
everywhere.
like over and over and over again. We can
Which
make
is
it
better
bigger.
than, if you remember, Ryu had one in the Van Damme movie. Remember that? And it looked like a bulb exploded on set. Like it was so weird because he does this, and they just went flicker with the lights, and that was the fireball. It was so weird. It was out of
Yeah,
place. Liu
it's
Kang
the
had
lack of
one.
commitment.
Yeah, Liu Kang had one in Mortal Kombat that didn't really make sense, but it was more traditional, I guess.
Hmm.
They just need to lean into that shit. Nobody cares that came to see this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
I
In
forget the
fact, like
example I used on our first record, but like they need to
people,
lean into that type of film and
and I think it's
embrace
actually
that
like
stuff.
more that people care the other way. They care when it's not there. They want it to
Yeah.
be. There's like, just make it goofy, weird, like energy blast stuff. Like do that. Why?
Like
Why
I'm
not?
not saying she has to be dressed in the showing her entire like being half
Yeah.
naked with the blue, but like have her be the reporter, have her be like that character. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have that many issues with how they've changed Chun-Li, but like in Bison, just being a generic crime boss is so great. Like he should have been flamboyant and in the cape, and it should have been out of left field.
Yeah.
Um,
I
embrace the world building, I guess. You know, like we were
can.
saying with Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. Like embrace it, do it. Like we'll get into that with our other segments. But I'm wondering, like, is there anything else you enjoyed about this movie? I'll say I was surprised how not terrible it was. Like,
Yeah, and I
like
think
I was really expecting it to be just utter garbage.
yeah, same. I really thought I had really low expectations for this, and it surprised me, especially the first 15 minutes or so. I was really into it. Like when the dad's ambushed by Balrog in the
Uh huh.
house and those fights, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like I was digging where they were going with it, and it just kind of meanders with that for the rest of the movie, and never quite. I thought Robin Shaw. I hate that I'm not
Show.
pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Mortal Kombat. You know, I said last time like it felt like he was kind of coming to terms with acting in Mortal Kombat. I thought his
Hmm.
performance was fine, but he was not very strong. I thought he was a much better actor in this. I liked
It's,
his character work in this.
I don't know a lot about his background. I think we went into it a little bit more, where he did kind of grow up as some kind of performer. But
Yeah,
I think of maybe his a similar trajectory to like Jackie Chan, where Jackie Chan, the part that he focused on, at least it seemed like in his earlier work, wasn't the like acting part. It was the physical acting, like the
right,
being able to
right.
do the stunts and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
because with Mortal
then
Kombat, he was a choreographer as well, so he was really
yeah,
just kind of there to make sure the fights look good and also play Liu Kang.
but then got like, like if you ever saw the was it The Foreigner, or It was one of
Oh,
like
Jackie Chan. Yeah,
Jackie
with that,
Chan's like latest
Pierce
one.
Brosnan.
Yeah, and like he's
Yeah,
just
he's really
doing
good in
this
that.
really subdued, like kind of naturalistic performance that is
Yeah.
like completely like subtle and very engaging, and like and where you can see this like complete meld of like his physical skills with like actual dramatic like ability to convey emotions effectively in a non-cartoonish way, from
I mean,
like, you know, if you look at that and like Rumble in the Bronx, it is like
oh
night
yeah.
and day, you know.
He yeah, he put out a statement because he was like an opera singer too. Like his training is all over the place because he was forced to go to one of those like really horrific like ballet schools as a kid where they like bend these children and make them perform, um and so he's really well versed in all that stuff. But he put out a statement about like I'm only going to do roles like that from now on. Like I'm not going to do full on martial arts. But that was a long time ago, so I was happy to see that movie come out and
Hmm.
see stronger acting from him because he's definitely capable of it. Um,
But we shouldn't talk about Jackie Chan while we're talking about Street Fighter.
well, no, it's
That's
funny. You mentioned that. I was gonna say like, we'll be talking about Tekken next. I think he was offered a role in Tekken. I wish I would have thought about that
hmm.
earlier, but him and Jet Li, I think, were supposed to be in the Tekken movie.
I think whatever decision led to them not being into that was the correct one. I think
I
that was
have a feeling
probably
it probably
smart.
will be.
Well, also like if you look at the budget of Tekken, like there is no like that movie would have been
They would
worse
not be
if
able to
Jet Li
afford.
and like Jackie Chan were in it. It would be like, okay, so
That's the
anyway,
budget.
yeah, 10
My
50% of our
cousin Neil's
budget
gonna
went to
film
these
you
two
guys.
guys. Yeah, like
Go punch each other.
um
Um,
I think speaking of the performances in Street Fighter, um I think this is going to be a hard line for us because I found Chris Klein to be delightful in this, and I think you found him to be very annoying.
very only because that first entrance online is just the most obnoxious strut. Like, hey, I see we got some beheadings here. Like it was
Yeah,
just like, what are you? What movie are you in? And
I
I
mean,
think
yeah.
I think I brought it before. He watched the Van Damme one in his trailer before walking on set, and no one else has ever seen it. So he thought he was going into a completely different movie than everyone else.
Yeah,
I've
I
had
think
time to simmer. It's not that bad, but it's like it's so bizarre and not that character at
it.
all. You know, like to me.
I would say it is bizarre. Like for if you haven't seen the movie, audience, um, I would describe Chris Klein as essentially trying to do a Christian Slater impression throughout this whole movie, but
Bold
like
choice.
yeah. um he's making a choice. He is definitely making a choice to be like very like I don't even know how to describe it. Like Christian Slater, if Christian Slater had just had like an espresso before he came on set and was just like wild and great. Like Christian Slater if Nicolas Cage was his dad. Like
Oh
that's what it
wow.
feels like.
What a
Um
movie that would be.
You know what? I think I think someone needs to make that movie. Like, what would that be? Like okay, two father son hitmen who have to avenge their wife slash mother's death, like
Well,
murder.
and also steal the Declaration of
Yeah, and
Independence
like they're high on cocaine the entire time.
the
And
entire time.
and I'll say this, that isn't in the script, but Nicolas Cage and Christian Slater play it as if it was.
Yeah, that's I mean that's going to be expected.
Yeah.
Have you seen the trailer for the history of swearing that he's hosting?
No, no.
Oh, Nicolas Cage is doing like a little mini series on Netflix all about the history of swear words.
Of
And
course.
it's a brilliant trailer. But the trailer is him in this, it looks like an Old Spice commercial. But someone in the comments wrote, oh my God, can I please watch Nicolas Cage and Christopher Walken have a 3 hour conversation? That would almost be as good. Christian Slater's got to be in the mix too, but those two talking,
Oh my
especially
goodness.
the performance that he has in this commercial. Anyway,
Like, yeah, these
Nicolas Cage in a Street Fighter movie would be pretty interesting. I wonder who he'd play.
who would he play? That would be, I mean, you want to say M Bison, but there's got to be.
Well, so okay, so this is deep cuts, but Street Fighter Alpha was like a prequel series,
Okay.
and at the time, SNK had this series of games like Art of Fury and King of Fighters. I forget the hierarchy, but they introduced this character Dan that was kind of like a riff on Ryu. He wore a pink gi and he has like a really weak, like anemic fireball. Um,
That's probably offensive, right? Like,
a little bit, yeah. Well, as I'm saying it, I don't think it was intended that way, but I always took it as an insult against Steven Seagal because he looks just like
oh,
Steven
I
Seagal. He's got
see.
the
I see.
ponytail and everything.
Okay.
I never thought of it like that, which is probably the meaning, which I feel bad now even bringing it up. I always took it as like, haha, Steven Seagal's silly.
Yeah.
So Nicolas Cage playing that character would be amazing to me. Like, just...
Can you like? So I think like Steven Seagal and Nicolas Cage are roughly the same age. I would love to see Nicolas Cage in like a Steven Seagal biopic. Like,
oh my god,
just
that'd
like,
be brilliant.
wouldn't that would just be insane? Oh my
What
goodness.
an insane human
Because like
being Steven Seagal
Steven
is.
Seagal is not a good person,
He's
but
not. He's a
he has
horrible
had a
person.
very interesting life, and it would be like cool to see it like depicted in some sort of fashion.
Yeah. Wow. I like. There's so many. You know, like because I love how like he had like final cut say over most of his movies. So like Under Siege 2, the guy thought he was walking into the booth to like help with a fight scene, and he's like, "All right, load up reel one," and like he like sat there. Can you imagine cutting a 2-hour movie with Steven Seagal dictating every shot you had to do? I would jump out a window.
Oh, that would be horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we go into our next segment, is there anything else you wanted to mention about the movie in general?
Surprisingly watchable. I think people, you know, if you're completely bored and you can't find the remote and it just randomly played on your television, you might be having. There's worse ways to spend your time. I thought the casting was good for this.
For instance, one of the worst ways is to watch the movie Tekken,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about next time.
We'll talk about next time.
So the only thing I wanted to briefly mention is this does have in the realm of pixel theater canon, the movies we talk about, this is a high pedigree because it's got Robin Shaw, like we talked about, but it's also the director of Doom, which is Andre Barkowski, I think, or Bartowski, something like that.
Yeah.
And what it's interesting about this guy is he directs these kind of like not great, like kind of generic movies, but as a cinematographer, he does these like more high profile kind of not prestige, but like well received kind of movies. So like,
oh, interesting.
It's kind of this like, I don't know if he's, you know, frustrated director or if he's like great cinematographer who takes directing gigs like in order to make more money or something, like, or maybe it's both, who knows. But like I do think it's interesting because he like was a cinematographer on like Speed and Falling Down.
Oh, that's right.
The Verdict, like, you know, these kind of like higher profile, bigger budget kind of or prestige kind of things, depending on what you want to look at. I haven't seen Falling Down in forever. I don't know if that's a good movie. My feeling is like it was thought of as a good movie, and then it's probably not. I don't think Falling Down ages well.
What I'm upset about is it's not that it's been commandeered per se, but a lot of its ideology has kind of been like heralded by like the Proud Boys and that kind of ultra right wing stuff, which I never took the movie as, but I hate that that's kind of a implied context now. I remember being really like entertaining. Like when I worked, my first job was at Target, and there was an employee orientation video, and they showed the scene where he's trying to order breakfast. Okay. I just think that's hilarious. They showed me a scene from that movie in a orientation video for a job. But it was basically
they're saying like, watch out for this, it may happen. Or
no, they were just saying this is really bad customer service. They were on the side of Kurt Russell's character, which is, or
Michael Douglas.
Kurt Douglas. Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. I know it's this. The movie's probably shot that way. I don't think you're supposed to overly sympathize with him, but
no, not at all.
Like anyway, okay. So I think that'll wrap up our brief little discussion of the movie, and let's go into our next section talking about the game. Let's pop into the arcade. Where to start with these games? So we've kind of covered a little bit of Street Fighter, but this question that I had for you And because it's something that I always think about when I'm watching these and people are talking about all the lore behind it, is where the hell do people learn about all the character backstories? Because I I've basically learned it through like you and a couple other friends who just spout
Right.
off like massive backstories for every character and every iteration. I'm like, how do you know this? It's not in the game. Like
I
the
know.
game
I
is
know.
the game is they get on a plane and go to the fighting place. Like
Yeah.
how do you know
And
what
especially
this
since like
is?
I've beaten like Street Fighter 2, 3, 4, 5 with Ryu in like every version. And every one of them, he's like holding a backpack and standing next to a waterfall. Like, well, I'm gonna go look for my next fight. And that's like all the game gives you. So yeah, there's this whole thing about this dark side, this dark energy that he's fighting, and I don't know where that comes from because it's not anywhere in the game. There's anime, there's comic books, but I don't think that was prevalent until like 10 years after the first game. So it is
Hmm.
interesting to me. Like my favorite in the series is Street Fighter 3. I couldn't tell you what the hell's going on in that. The main boss is Gil, and he's half blue and red. And like when you fight him, like the world's ending. There's pieces of concrete floating in the air. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, sure. But there is these kind of I've heard there's like all these extra like movies and stuff that like animated movies that come in through
So yeah,
Street
when,
Fighter.
when we get to it, I think the best film I've seen of Street Fighter so far, which is not a high mark, but the Street Fighter 2, the animated movie,
Yeah.
does a really good job of like that's where like that's the lore. That's a legit. There's some problematic scenes with Chun-Li, like and this fight scene with Vega, that's almost like a rape or an
Oh God.
implied rape, and she's in a towel for most of it, so that's a little disturbing. But other than that, I mean, the lore of the what the game is really well represented in
Hmm.
that, and you get to see everyone's stories and why they can't just take that approach to the movies. They always have to do something bizarre with them. Like in Chun Li's case, just totally rewriting it. Um, but I think the animated ones that I've seen have done a better job of portraying the characters.
Do you think I wonder if like the part of that is because it's animated and so is like similar to the style of the video game, people are less
I
inclined
mean,
to try and make it
you can show
realistic.
Guile combing that ridiculous hairstyle, and it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily jump out. Doing that live action is a little weird, but I still think they need to embrace the insanity. Like, and we've always used Detective Pikachu as an example of just like embracing the game
Hmm.
and letting that world make sense. And I think just a crazy version of Street Fighter that's almost like James Gunn directed it or something. Like not so much Guardians per se, but I don't know, just like with Guardians example, like yeah, you have a talking raccoon. That's what exists in this world. You show Blanca, he's a big green dude with electricity. That happens. Like that's what everyone would be on board. I think it's
Hmm.
when you start doing weird things like Scottish accents for babies who didn't have Scottish parents growing up is when we detach. So
um so my memories of playing this game are very much centered around Street Fighter 2, which is kind of like the only one I really engaged with, and from my understanding is probably the one that people who are like really into Street Fighter have the most kind of nostalgia for. It was like one of their first like interactions, or the one they would play the most, maybe because I
yeah,
don't know. Like I just saw that Street Fighter 2 arcade card cabinet like fucking everywhere
yeah,
when I was a kid, and I remember the art style. I remember like the backgrounds for like all the different like fighting locations, like Giles like with the like Harrier jet or whatever behind him, or the jet behind him, and Vegas with like the like cage or something. I think that was Vegas, and
yeah.
then
Well, that was an interesting gameplay mechanic because he could climb up on the cage and scuttle around and then dive bomb you, and it was only on that stage. I always thought that was neat. Chun Li's had a guy in the back choking a chicken while watching the
yeah,
fight, which is really disturbing.
that was weird. Yeah. The
Yeah,
background animations of the people watching the street fight were uh very weird if you go back and think and like watch it and like think about
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's cool though. I mean, it is big sprites. I mean, I remember the first time I walked up on that game was at the AMC theater by the Lansing Mall,
Hmm.
and like they only had like two or three arcade games, but everyone was crowded around Street Fighter, and I it was Blanca fighting Guile. I'll never forget that. I'm just going, what is this game? That guy's green and he's glowing, and that guy's got weird hair. This is awesome. I'm gonna put my quarter down and
I
yeah.
think, yeah, something that really sticks with me is the visual style of Street Fighter. I don't know what it is, but I have like it does feel more like art than the other ones.
Yeah.
Like definitely Mortal Kombat, which isn't art. It's, you know, photorealistic renderings of like actual people, which was its big selling point at the time, and in hindsight looks like trash, just terrible.
Yeah.
But like Street Fighter, like I it does seem like something that spawns a lot of like fan art and stuff because it's so
Oh
like
yeah.
bright and like interestly, like the
Yeah,
character
it's vibrant.
silhouettes are
And
like
I
obvious, you know, like you can take away all the color and you still know who those people are just
Yeah,
by
and that's an
watching it.
important, mechanic. Like yeah, each silhouette is really strong. You immediately know that's Dhalsim, Guile, Blanca. Like everybody stands out. And I went
Whereas
into this.
whereas with Mortal Kombat, it's like, I don't know, that could be Reptile, it could be Scorpion, it could
Well,
be
I was gonna
something
say this,
else.
the same actor with a color palette swap, so of
Yeah.
course you can't pick that out. I
That's
went on a diatribe about this on the failed episode, but like Street Fighter was a really mechanically sound game. It was very well thought out. It was balanced to almost perfection. It's why it's still a mainstay. I still play Street Fighter 2 today. I'll just randomly play it, throw it on and play through the arcade section, and everything's balanced. Guile has these attacks that counteract people who jump in with jump kicks, and the fireballs keep, everything gets the players moving. Whereas like in Mortal Kombat 2, I despite being really nostalgic for it and liking the game, it's a very turtle based, like people crouched and hit a lot, and a lot of sweeping, a lot of cheesy um, back and forth, and I don't think it's balanced particularly well. Like Melina can really destroy Jax. I
Mhm.
just remember that being a big thing because they don't mesh well. Whereas Street Fighter, it's
Yeah.
arguable like two good players could randomly pick characters and just dominate each other, and it could go either way. And I just always love that about the franchise. Like it's really the frames matter, the special moves matter. Everything is thoughtfully calculated.
Yeah, I think it's almost like Mortal Kombat's kind of like checkers and Street Fighter's chess if you like understand the underlying mechanics of it, which I
Absolutely.
always and continually find baffling and frustrating. Like I'm
Right.
never able to do the fighting games at all. Um, it's interesting because the only fighting game, well, maybe interesting is a stretch, but the only fighting game I ever really engaged with in any kind of long term was Soul Calibur, which
Mm.
is, you know, kind of like next generation, but still like not as popular as, you know, the two or even three main ones. Um,
Yeah.
but what I
I would
really,
argue that one's even more of a technical strategy game because you can button mash through Street Fighter and you can button mash in Soul Calibur, but you can't button mash against an experienced player in Soul
yeah,
Calibur. They won't let you. Like the game, like the 3D space and the ways to counter and parry moves, like you'll get destroyed if you try that type of gameplay in that game.
that's what I always found because I was, you know, I was always just button mashing, and um, I would play against people who like had like learned how like a certain character is meant to be played in
Uh-huh.
that and just get destroyed, just like
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely torn apart, like
yeah. You
unable to
can't
even
button
do
mash in
anything.
that one.
No. um any other memories you have of this game or anything? Because something I remember is we were talking about Chun-Li, but the character to you who's the main character is Ryu, and
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
they've never done a movie, at least that we've seen so far, where it's about Ryu. And I remember us talking about the first game was, I think, a lot more focused on him. Is that right? The first Street Fighter?
Well, so yeah, Street Fighter is just funny because he's like a redheaded guy in that, but he was definitely the lead in that. I think you could only play as him, if I recall. I've got it somewhere. But in that game, he defeats Saga, and he does a dragon punch for the first time, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
gives him that scar. And I think he loses the eye, and and so for me,
In a
and,
rare
and
in a rare show of continuity that
Yeah, that
that
continues.
continues.
Despite the character looking totally different in all the follow-ups, that they've kept that in the game. But I think I went into that last time was like what's great about Street Fighter is each character is strong. Like there's an argument for each one of them being the lead. Some
Mhm.
people gravitated toward Dhalsim and like it could go either way. But for me, Ryu was always the protagonist, and I thought his story is more traditional because it was mythology based, and his best friend Ken and him would like spar growing up, and Ryu's journey was just to become the best fighter there was, and Bison kind of gets in his way, and so that I just thought it was a very traditional story
Mhm.
focusing on him, and I just think it's interesting so far how much of a side character, if at all, he's featured in the live action attempts. There's been some fan films. I think that actually, I just realized this. The guy who plays the lead in the Tekken movie played Ryu in the big fan film that came out around 2010, and that's
Hmm.
all Ryu based. And
Interesting.
yeah, I think he needs to be explored more in a movie in a traditional manner because I think that'll work better. But it works. Well, Cammy is another interesting one too because she is like an assassin who's brainwashed to work for M Bison. So arguably she could be the lead as well. You could tell Cammy's story, and Chun-Li works too. I just think they went too far away from the source material with this one, where
Mhm.
it's just a movie with some girl who just happens to be named Chun-Li, and then Bison's got an accent. That's what they should have called this.
Yeah, some girl who happens to be named Chun-Li.
I'd spend $5 to watch that. I did.
Uh, oh, alrighty. So I think that's gonna wrap up any kind of thoughts we had about this game. And let's go into our room for improvement, where we're gonna talk about what could have changed to make this movie a little bit better.
Well, there's just silly stuff. Like when she the spoiler alert, when she kills him Bison, it's so bizarre to me. Like she does this like weird pirouette thing, and then she like lands with her feet around his neck, and then she spins it around. Like it's just you can't be grounded and realistic and then do these weird
Yeah.
fantasy based move. Like it's just they needed to pick a lane. Uh, so okay, you tell Chun Li's story, but you stick with how it was in the game. She's a reporter. And Bison killed her father or did something wrong to her family, and she goes to get revenge. But just embrace the wacky, man. Have it be where she's alien to the like she starts to infiltrate this world and Bison's got the Psycho Crusher. Everyone's doing fireballs. She learns that she can control it, and it's funny because you could almost keep the story beats of this movie. I just think they could have done it in a way that embraced the absurdity a bit more. They were timid to embrace the franchise that they're basing their movie on, and you can smell that a mile away, and it just makes the movie not work as well.
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. And it's weird how they brought in these crazy elements, but then the other things they pulled back on. So
Yeah,
they'll have Chun Li's kind of exaggerated, kind of weird fighting style. They try and do like the weird, like upside down spin thing
yeah,
once, and they'll do like some weird wire work sometimes, like you were talking about with the final scene with M Bison. But then they'll try and do like very like action, like very highly choreographed kind of like precise action scenes too. Like I was thinking
yeah,
of the bathroom fight scene between Chun-Li and like M Bison's assistant or something, and how like highly technical that is. It's very like uh at least seemingly realistic. Like it's very
yeah,
it's like gritty and like they do the newer. I noticed like this kind of different focus in fighting styles of like attacking joints, and like where you look at like older like Bruce Lee movies, they're like a lot of kicks and like impressive like jumps and stuff like that, trying to like and
yeah.
flips and things like that. And like in more modern, it's all about like let's knock the knee down so they go down and then
Yeah, it's
punch
all
them in
about
the
ground
face.
game. They want to
And
get you
like
on the floor
yeah,
and UFC
or
style kind
like
of fighting.
bend their arm the wrong way and break the elbow, and like all these
Oh,
like brutal kind of more moves.
yeah.
and when you look at that in contrast to the other stuff they're doing, it just like pick a lane,
Pick a lane.
like
That's all I
and
want. Is like
yeah,
either direction would have worked for this in a way, but to try to do both just lessens both.
and I think go the weird way. You've already got the like
Yeah.
crazy fireballs. Do that, put it in there.
Like, who's the movie for? They're making this for like Born Identity fans
Yeah,
who probably don't give a shit about Street Fighter. So the Street Fighter guys are like, "Oh, what is this?" And like no one's happy. It's
that's true.
very odd.
The tagline could have been Street Fighter, no one's happy.
Yeah.
But then also like then they do these like crazy weird things that is this hallmark of it feels to me like Japanese storylines in video games of like everything to do with like your soul and transferring it to different objects and like
Yeah,
it's
they
come up
abandoned
multiple
that
times.
real quick. They
But,
could have
like-
gone somewhere with that, but they don't do anything with that.
But
So I
they-
forgot that was a thing until you brought it up last time.
They put it in the movie that M. Bison has put his soul into his daughter for some reason to be evil, and then he needs to kill his daughter in order to get rid of any part of him. Like, there's no reason why. And maybe
Doesn't
in
make
the
any sense.
games they don't do like why does it matter? Like, one, what do you mean he transferred his soul? Like, isn't this just a movie about a crime boss who like takes over and like
That would
why
have
is that
fit
part
with
of
the
it?
absurd. If they'd gone like Big Trouble in Little China with it, where it's just bonkers.
Yeah.
That might have
And
fit, but they bring it up and they're almost embarrassed about it. They go, never mind, forget we said anything
like
about
Big
that.
Trouble in Little China like is like a straight like kind of hero's journey where a person crosses a threshold into a strange world that they are unaware of, and
that would have been perfect
yeah.
for Chun-Li. Like you could have had her as this investigative reporter, and all of a sudden she's like, oh my. She happens on these guys in an alley fighting with fireballs, and there's this underground tournament. And she infiltrates it because it's the only way to get the bison.
Yeah,
and she just happens to be a really good fighter. Like, I don't know, like that's the plot of the game. So go that way.
Yeah, like that could have worked. Or just like you could make that, like an opening up of like, oh my god, this kind of crazy stuff is happening, like like you were saying, like underground, like criminal underworld. They all like learn these really intense kind of energy based like fighting styles and all this stuff, and M. Bison's overseeing it as he's taking over a criminal empire. He's using it as like the front to like kill his enemies or something like that. That works. But you try and bring in all these other elements, like
it's just a mess.
Pick a lane, again, over and over again with these things. Pick a lane, and commit to it.
And the exciting lane, because the boring lane just makes this a generic movie. We already have the Bourne Identity.
We can watch that movie, and it's not a boring movie. I love the Bourne Identity, but I don't need Chun-Li in the Bourne Identity.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me. Like I picked it up with this and like the RoboCop remake. Like it's almost a skill to have a gunfight break out, and I'm bored. Like these guys are shooting at each other, and I have no investment at all. I don't care what's happening. That's weird to me. That's almost a skill, I think.
I watched that RoboCop remake, and you're right. Like, man, you guys did a really good job of making the concept of a human cyborg police officer who's commanded by an evil corporation to take over government services just a slog to get through.
Complete slog. And then it ends in this like, oh, if we made another one, it might be more like what you wanted. And it's like, no, too late. You squandered that gift.
Yeah. You squandered Michael Keaton, you bastards.
Bastards.
And I feel like they kind of squandered Neil McDonough. Like, they didn't let him go crazy. Like, can you, like, we were talking about, like, Neil McDonough full on, like, cape and crazy red outfit.
In the
like,
wind,
amazing. It would be great.
Yeah, give him the little
Neil
control
McDonough,
panel from the last movie.
Like, with his hands and lightning coming out of it. Like, how great would that be?
Oh, I'd just be eating popcorn, man.
Yeah. Oh, so great.
Wasted opportunity.
I know. So overall, Ron, what do you want to give this movie? What should we make it out of?
I feel like I was too nice last time. The more I'm thinking about it.
We've had some
So
time
what
to
was her
reflect.
fireball call? Like Kikoden? Give it I give it 4. Like it was I never felt bad watching it. I just thought they made weird choices. Like
Yeah.
it started off strong. I liked the casting and I liked their performances.
Mhm.
Neil's choices were odd, but he was still fine. If I have to embrace what the movie was, I thought the acting was okay, except
Yeah.
for our boy Chris Klein, but that matter of
I
opinion.
think it was great. I don't.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll give it a 4 out
And
of 10.
we didn't really talk about this because Chun-Li is, for it being about her, she's not really given a lot to do. But
Right,
I thought Kristen Kruak or whatever did a
Yeah.
pretty good job. She
Yeah, I did too.
I don't think their fighting is probably as strong as some of the other people in this. Definitely not like the guy who plays her father, or
Yeah,
Robin Shaw. But they're probably. I know at least Robin Shaw is definitely trained in that kind of stuff. But
definitely.
she
Yeah.
she did pretty good and held her own in a lot of those scenes.
Sure. It wasn't
Um,
like,
yeah,
like Charlie's Angels were like, we're doing wire work. I mean, it was bad wire work, but it wasn't the fault of her. I think
yeah,
her fighting was good. So
yeah. If they were going to do another one of these, I think they could do a lot worse than casting her
I
as
would,
Chun Li.
yeah, if they did another one, like I'd almost want a full reboot. Let Neil McDonough go crazy. Damn it. Like I'm still so mad they squandered that.
Or like just do a direct reboot and he comes back from the dead. We already
Yeah,
did that. He can
sure.
transfer his soul, so why can't he come back
Why
from the
not?
dead?
It worked.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you gave it a 4. I think, yeah, we've been agreeing a lot, so I'm going to also give it a 4. I think I give it a 4 for different reasons than you give it a 4. Like I almost want to give it a 3, but then I think about Chris Klein. I don't know. I kind of no, nah, nope. I'm sorry. I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna go with 5. Actually, I was just thinking about like I've been nitpicking it so much that I just forget watching it. I was just like, this could be worse. So I'm gonna give it a 5. I think it
That's fair.
deserves that.
I think I gave it a
Um,
5 last time too, but I'm gonna stick with my 4.
okay. So 4. What are they called? Chun-Li
Oh,
fireballs.
Kikuden.
Cutins. Okay. All right. So let's wrap this up real quick with our just let's talk about whatever we want time. Let's go into the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay. So I know we're short on time, Ron. So is there anything you wanted to talk about before we end here?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to go into real quick the cyberpunk controversy, and that could
Oh
be its
goodness,
own.
yeah.
That could be. So I've been playing it, and I got it on PC. I've got a 1080 Ti and like a 6-year-old i7. So I did not expect it to run at all. And
Mhm.
knock on wood, I'm like 10 hours in. I haven't had any issues. It's never crashed. It's been pretty entertaining. So my experience has been like okay, but boy, like what a mess. Like that game should not have. I don't know what the deal is because it was originally going to come out in April,
Mhm.
and I don't think the next gen consoles were even on the table. But somehow in that development cycle, after a couple of delays, it became only next gen, and oh god, we've got to deal with the core systems. But if you bought this on like a PS4, it's nigh unplayable. Like I've seen people on YouTube post it, and it will play for like a minute, and then just load for like 60 seconds and just
Mhm.
crash to the main
Wow.
menu. Like I've never seen a game blue screen crash like this one does. So it's kind of understandable that they want refunds, but to see a major $300 million AAA game get pulled from the PlayStation Store, that's unprecedented. That's nuts. So
Yeah. The Oh goodness, there's some Hideo Kojima game that got pulled from the PlayStation Store. That's kind of the only other one I've heard about
oh,
where
the
it seemed,
PT thing.
yeah,
Well, that
because
was
that
just
was
that
like,
was weird politics with
yeah, yeah,
Konami because they're assholes.
yeah, where like
But
he was basically fired from Konami, and so he kind of
Yeah.
wrapped up this game and made fun of them in the game, and so they
Pretty
eventually
much.
pulled it. But yeah,
Because
like,
that was a
and that wasn't
backdoor.
even that wasn't even like really a finished game. Like that was
Well,
just
that
a
was
very
Silent
weird,
Hill.
yeah.
It was a teaser to like, hey, we're actually making a Silent Hill game, which turned into Death Stranding. So
Yeah.
either way, we got what he would have done with it. But man, I'm so bummed that they that happened. But yeah, I mean,
but
that
yeah,
was the
like
last
that's the
time
only
a
other
big
thing
game.
I can think of where like a game that seems like you could still be making money off of, you know, because everybody wants
Yeah.
to play Kojima games,
Yeah.
gets pulled. And like, so with this, it's like it just has to have been such a massive like mismanagement of like not picking,
I
not
think well
making
the
a decision
public.
about what kind of game. Like you either make it for the PS4, you make it for the PS5.
Yeah.
You can't. It just seems like they tried to do everything and didn't figure out how to do it, and so it doesn't work anywhere besides PC mostly.
It was rushed, you know.
It was rushed, but it's
public
also
fervor.
delayed. So like it's been delayed so many times. How can a thing that's been delayed be rushed too? Like that's just so mismanagement. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something wrong along the development path.
Yeah.
But they should have focused on next gen and not even release it for PS4 and Xbox. There was this creep put out like it has to be supported on everything, and like because like all the new Call of Duty, everything is cross platform, and they really needed to stick to their guns and say, look, you want to play this and experience it right, you've got to buy a new gen system. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's and they spread themselves too thin. You know, it's a bummer. If you get it on PC, I'm sure there's still bugs. I've not experienced any, and I am not playing in an optimal fashion.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a later machine or a newer processor, you know, because my shit's 6 years old, and I feel like that's hampering it. But you know, I'm not playing on ultra or anything, but on high, it looks really good, and I'm happy with the experience. So,
I do wonder, like, they were at this because it was like delayed and so often, like they're kind of at this weird crossroads where it kind of de facto became a launch title, even though it was never intended to be. And given the issues that came with like the supply line of people getting a PS5 and finding it so difficult, like maybe they got scared of like, you know, if we release this exclusively for the PS5 right when it comes out, nobody's going to be able to buy the game. You know, it's going to look like too few people bought it because nobody has the console yet. So we've got to make it for everybody, and then they just screwed it. So that's my conspiracy theory. I will never know if that's true, but
Captain Hindsight, who's me, I would have released a PC game.
Mm-hmm.
1 year later, you guys get to enjoy the game on consoles. That's
Yeah.
it. It's the only way it would have been done right, I think. Focus on one platform. I mean, my God, like the last 2 weeks before launch, they were trying to optimize it for Stadia. I know like 2 guys who own a Stadia, you know? Like, it's
up until you just said it, I'd forgotten a Stadia existed. I forgot what that was. Is that the thing that Steam made, or
it's Google? It's like
Google.
It's like a Chromecast.
Google's got
streaming thing.
Google's got too much fucking money. They can just like burn it on shit that nobody cares about and just still support it for a couple years. And then they say like, looks like it lost $300 million. So I guess we're going to stop now.
Oh, we just made that back. All right. We'll stop anyway.
Okay. Well, I think that's gonna wrap up this. It's a short lobby section, but you know, everybody here has other responsibilities. We can't just be podcasting all day. So we're gonna wrap up this episode. You can follow us on Twitter. We are pixel_theater_ because I am bad at search engine optimization. And you can find us on Facebook. We're Pixel Theater there. And just, you know, if you want to shout out into the ether some night, just scream out like, hey, I disagree with your review of Tekken. I thought it was much better than you said it was. You know, maybe we'll hear you. I don't know. Maybe you live closer to us than you know. And I know you live closer to me in my heart. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you back here next time. Have a great day. This is a technical difficulty.